But it doesn't really matter what gear you have, but you might get stuck on this build. If you get in combat, you can't swap to another build, right? You can't template swap. So on this build, I'm currently just running like Dragon's gear and durability. We have cleansing and hydro on greatsword, and we have energy and cleansing on sword. Okay, so we have like a pretty tanky build, right? Pretty tanky build. And the traits we're running on WillyHunter are the following. Now, this doesn't matter, really. This doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. But everything else kind of matters. WillyHunter, you kind of need this, this, and this. Okay, you need to pick those three. You also need to pick this one in virtues. Because these buffs that you see, they stay when you template swap. So this stays, and your F3 buff and your F1 and your F2 buff all stays, okay? This lethal tempo also stays. So these are the important things. This one and this one. And I think this one doesn't matter, actually. But, I mean, whatever. This is the build that I'm running. You can do what you want. Use that as you will. And then basically, you're using F1, F2, F3, right? And then you're swapping template. And you can do that by keybinds. So you can go to your keybinds. You can go down. They introduced this a while ago. And you can put keybinds on your build. So build 1 template, build 2. So I've got F2 and F3 for one build, which will change my build to the template 1 and equipment template 1. So build template 1, equipment template 1. And then I have another build on F4, F5. So I just press 2 buttons together and it swaps the build. And you do that before you get in combat. So then you switch build to this build. This build is the most important thing you need to really make sure you have. You can change weapons around, but I'm using greatsword, sword, focus. You could maybe use greatsword, sword, and torch or something, or scepter torch. But greatsword and sword is very, very, very good. So use those two at least. And I'm running carrion because the damage you do is only based on power stat and condition damage. So pick any other stat after you've focused on those two. So carrion. I'm using Flame Legion runes. There might be a better option, but that's what I'm using. I've got 2 pieces of Celestial because I don't have carrion earrings, but everything else is legendary, so I can change stats on all of that. And I've got Rabid on my weapons, but again, you don't need Rabid. But I'm just using Rabid because I want a little bit of crit chance because I've got Sigil of Fire on. And Rage, which means that you know, obviously Flame Blast and Quickness on crit. Then I have Hydro Geomancy on Greatsword. It's important you use these because basically you're going to hit 5 players with Hydro and hit 5 players with Geomancy, which basically the more attacks that you do, the more Aegis you get. The more Aegis you get, the more times you're going to block. And every time Aegis is removed, you're going to do damage. So these are the traits on I'm calling it DragonBender, but it's DragonHunter. So you've got Mystic Rebuke. Now usually you get a 1-second cooldown on this if you use it with WillyHunter, but because we're template swapping, there's no cooldown on it. And we're using Permeating Wrath as well. So those are the important ones. But everything else you should use as well, to be honest. These are all very, very good. But yeah, that's pretty much the build. So I can just show you here how it works. So if I F1, F2, and F2 again, and then F3, and now I template swap, you'll see that those buffs remain on DH. Okay? So, and you basically have 6 seconds or less than 6 seconds to get hit. You don't want to dodge. You don't want to use any blocks. Okay? You don't want to use any blocks, so you don't really want to use Shield of Wrath. Use that basically after. Like, you don't use that. You don't use this either. You don't use F3. You don't use Renewed Focus. You use that after you've done your combo. So, the combo is basically an easy combo is basically F1, F2, F3, and actually before the F3, you should use this heal skill, Litany of Wrath, because it's gonna help you survive a hell of a lot, especially if they use unblockable or something, because the Aegis is only gonna protect you so long, and also if you get corrupted and you get no stab, because this build is all self-sufficient, you get stability, right? But if you do get corrupted, then you get CC'd, you're obviously going to die straight away. So if you've got this heal up, it'll save you. So you basically F1, F2, F2, heal skill, F3. Then you swap templates. And then you basically I'm using Judge's Intervention and Sword 2 into the enemy, plus Stand Your Ground. Like that. Then I'm weapon swapping, and then I'm using Greatsword 2. And then after that, I'm probably using Greatsword 4, maybe the Trap, maybe standing around a little bit, looking pretty, and then I'm probably getting out of there. And then I start to think about using my defensive skills and blocks. Okay, so F1. Now, pay attention to F1. If you have a target on the enemy, you will go towards the destination where you're facing, right? So if I F1 now, I'll go towards that sheep. So if you don't want to do that, and you're just like trying to break line of sight, or you're hiding somewhere, then you can just F1 without target. Yeah? And then you can actually put a target on the enemy's stacking up, right? And then you can just drop the target by clicking on the floor somewhere. Then F1. Then press T to take the target again. Okay, and then you F2. Heal skill, F3, then you template swap and build template swap, and then you pour it in like that, and then you do some stuff. And now I'm on DH. It's complicated. You're not going to get it first time, you're not going to get it second time or third time, and you're going to fuck it up a lot, because I still fuck it up all the time. Like, things happen where, like, either I drop target or I get in combat or something, but yeah, that's basically how the build works. But yeah, they removed all boons on template swapping, so don't worry about getting boons before you template swap. Yeah, they are all removed. And stealth as well. So do remember that you lose stealth when you template swap. So if you're abusing some stealth mechanic or something in the game, and you template swap, you're going to get it removed. So just remember that. But yeah, the reason I'm porting in is because it allows me to template swap and get into them as soon as possible, because these buffs don't last very long. This Crashing Courage only lasts 6 seconds. This F2 lasts 6 seconds, and F1 lasts 8 seconds. So I'm using F1 first because it lasts the longest, right? It's 8 seconds. Also, I can use it to gap close sometimes. Then you're using F2. F2 is going to help you sustain and heal up, but you don't really need it because you're using your heal skill. So you don't really need F2, but I'm using it anyway. You know, it could be that you go towards the enemy and you need to gap close anyway. You might get interrupted on your heal skill when you're going towards the enemy, and then you might actually take advantage of this F2 for some healing, and you can just go in. You might port in to the enemy and realize you're still in combat, and then you're like, oh shit, but at least you have that healing up still. But yeah, they haven't removed buffs on template swap, but when they do, this build will be dead. It'll be completely dead. It'll be F. Once they remove buffs on template swapping. But yeah, you want to hit the enemy as much as possible and then get hit as much as possible at the same time. And you might think, oh shit, I'm gonna die. But don't worry, guys, you won't die. Okay? Just believe. Have faith. When I first started doing this, I was dodging too early. I was panicking. I was using my invulnerable skills and I was completely fucking up. I was doing no damage. But you just gotta believe, okay? If you die, you die. You just got to get a feel for how long you can stay into the enemy. Once you get like a feeling for it, then it's much easier to play the build. And once you get like muscle memory as well, it's going to be way easier. But this is pretty difficult to do because it's a lot of buttons to press. Like, I'm pressing a fuck ton of buttons here. Maybe you can simplify it somehow with just heal skill F3. Maybe. And you'll do less damage, but it might be easier for you. So, to start off with. So you can heal skill F3, then template swap, then Judges, Sword 2, then Greatsword. Judges and Sword 2, you're going to gap close quite a bit. Okay, because that's 600 range, and that's 1200. So you're going to do Judges first. Then you're going to go Sword 2. Judges, see how far we go with this. And then use Sword 2. So you cover a lot of distance this way. But yeah, you just need to get a feeling for how close you can get to the enemy. And a feeling for how long you can stay in the enemy as well. I kind of expected them to nerf this once it becomes a lot more people are using it. But for now it is what it is. It is a bit difficult though to play because you're always trying to be like out of combat to reset. Also, the enemy has to be stacked and hitting and using skills. So you might find that you're going to be way more useful in a squad situation or in a fight situation on another class. This might be completely useless sometimes. But sometimes you do crazy shit. but then no one else sees you do this crazy shit, and you're just like solo bombing, and you can make a lot of downstates, but sometimes you just don't kill anything with it. So going in at the right time is good, but the problem is you have to go always in first. You can't really go in after your enemy, like your allies push in, because the enemy's running away, or they might be pushing. And then when you go in, they're all spread out, and you're not going to kill anything. You might kill a few players on the back line, but yeah. But if you do get a situation where you're like going in deep and the enemy's moving, what you want to do is you want to try and follow the enemy in the direction they're going, so they're hitting you, obviously, if that makes sense, because you don't want to go away from them. You want to go into them. But yeah. And if you get stuck on this build afterwards and you don't want to break combat again to go back to your original template on Willbender, and you can just stay on that build, on the DH build, but you aren't going to do any damage because it's carrion. So you're not going to do hardly any damage. So your damage will fall off. So it is really good to get out of combat and start again and do the whole thing again, if you can. Because then you can go and burst again and again and again and again. But you might find it that by the time you get out of combat, your enemies have died, or your allies have died, and you've been completely useless. So, you know, like I said, this build is very, very... It doesn't really work in all situations. It's kind of useless, but sometimes you can pop off, you know. Sometimes you can really carry. But if you go in before and the enemy's stacked, you make downstates, and then your team pushes, that is like ideal situation. And then you can back off, get out of combat while your teammate pushes the enemy, and then you can go in again. And you keep kind of rotating with your teammates. You don't really want to push at the same time. You want to go in before. So, but if your team is permanently running away, then this build is kind of useless, unless you can abuse some situation where you have like a tower or a keep you can kite into, or if you can glide away, you know, because the enemies will chase you, and you don't have much mobility once you're stuck on DH. You only have F2, Sword 2 port, and Judges. So if those things are already used at the start, then you have nothing really to kite away with unless you're out of combat. And if you're out of combat, then obviously you can mount up, or you can go back to Willbender, and then you have a lot of mobility again with the F skills, or you can even go back in and play aggressive again or something. We did 115,000 damage today. Yeah, it's pretty insane. I did 115,000 pop today. We did 640,000 damage in 10 seconds or something ridiculous. I think I can show you right now. You can see the combo here in slow motion. You can't really be inside the tower, but you can kind of abuse stuff like when the enemy's like on a lord or on siege. But if they're on siege, if they're on catters, they're not really using skills. But if they're on a gate, they're going to be spamming auto attack on the gate. So if they're on a gate like this, fine. If they're on catter, then it's best to just wait for them to get inside and then get on the lord. Once they're on the lord, then you can go in. But yeah, they need to be attacking. So I'm trying to get a target here, and I'm failing miserably, as you can see. Now I get something, and I'm like, right, I go in. Now I gap close. I'm not in combat. I'm making sure I get in before I get in combat. Now I go in, and here's the 115,000 damage in literally a split second, and I'm doing 700,000 damage in total here. And I down, I think, a few players. Maybe a few players here. Yeah, you see I downstate one there. It says finish him. So, nearly died there. Actually, I did go downstate here. I get rezzed. But yeah, it's crazy damage. Had my team be there, you know, it would have been nice to get the team to like bomb the downstates or to pressure them. But now you can see the damage. I'm going to click up here on the top. You're going to see how much damage that is. 115,000. That peak is 115,000. 640,000 damage in total in a short space of time. But yeah, this shit will pop off sometimes like this.